Please welcome Karen. Thank you.
Cool. So I'm Karen Fielding, and I'm a web developer, and I'm going to talk to you today about a journey I've been on over the past few years regarding work-life balance. To get started straight into it, I'm going to talk about the thing I've just said, but not the work-life balance part of it. I'm Karen, and I'm a web developer. And if we zoom in on that a little, when you meet someone new for the first time, you generally introduce yourself in this kind of way, or it's the first question you get asked, either what do you do or where do you work? And it's so important to your identity in today's society of your work being who you are. When you're a child, the main question asked of you is, what do you want to be when you grow up? A child draws a weird picture kind of resembling a dog, and they're definitely going to be an aspiring artist. Or even earlier than that, a baby kicks and they're going to be the next big football player. And to a degree, that does feel right. Your work is your life, in so much that your work has more of a direct impact on you than most other decisions you get to make. Not only is it what you're interested in, and what you choose to do, but every aspect of your work has a direct correlation to your quality of life. That your co-workers, it's not so much what the work is that you do, but who you get to do it with. Good, fun, interesting co-workers can make all the difference between work feeling like a slog and somewhere where you're interested to show up every day. There's your commute. While generally seen as somewhere that you can do, like listen to music or podcasts, it's generally seen as dead time. And a longer commute is shown to have such a strong effect on people's happiness that they'd rather take a 19% pay cut than add 20 minutes to their commute time. There's your salary, which is the most obvious correlation, I suppose, of worth to worth. There's comparisons you can make to others and the ego that comes with it. But it also determines so much about your actual life. I mean, it determines what kind of mortgage you can get and where you can afford to live, where you can afford to rent. It determines whether you can actually have children, if you can afford that in your life, and pets. It determines your clothing and how you can be able to present yourselves to others. So overall, your work is a third of your lifespan. On the day-to-day, you sleep, you work, you play, and over the course of your life, you study, you work, and then you retire. So work is a big part of our lives. And the balancing of this subject is something that's been particularly important to me over the last few years, because in November 2016, I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety and depression. Which kind of sucks, I'm not going to lie. Mental health issues are something that's been on the radar for a while now, though, particularly in tech, but the problem is getting worse every year. Current statistics show that 1 in 6 people will suffer some kind of mental health problem every single week. Over 5% of the UK population has been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, and over 3% with depression. So this is common, and it's something that affects most people at some point in their lives. And it's something that I'm personally very conscious of. I tend to have good days and bad months. And over the course of the past few years, I've gotten the idea of my work-life balance very wrong at times. One of my key drivers for putting so much emphasis on this is that when I'm down, my schedule is something I can't afford to think about. I need to know pretty far in advance that I have enough time set aside for myself, for socializing, for my hobbies, and for self-care. Personally, some of my worst triggers around my anxiety are around late changing plans, the idea of disappointing others, and the concept of my self-worth in a world where we're expected to give 100% in every aspect of our lives. With that in mind, let's talk about what I did wrong. Firstly, I tried to commit to a solid, rigid 8-hour workday. I would get in at the same time every day, take my lunch break, leave, and be home at the same time. And that worked really well for a while. I never took my work home with me. It felt like the right thing to be doing in today's society. But then the problems started cropping up. I'd be halfway through a problem, and then I'd hit my lunch break, and I'd either completely disengage and come back and be, like the context switching would mean that I'd be in such a worse place than I had been before. It'd take me a long time to spin back up. Or I go on my lunch break, be thinking about it the entire time, and not actually have the brain stop to allow me to relax and get back into it properly. The couple rare occasions where I did have a tight deadline and I did have to work through my lunch breaks or stay late, I felt like such a martyr, and I ended up feeling like this isn't fair. I get stuck in these thoughts of, why am I doing this? This is so stressful. And anyone else with anxiety will know that when you start thinking, this is stressful, that's when you start to get stressed. I started recognizing some of these issues, so I decided to try something else. What if I worked whenever I felt like it? I'd still get in around the same time every day, but if I was in the middle of a problem, I'd allow myself to finish it. If I was halfway through a ticket at the end of the day, then I'd just stay for a few more hours. I worked more 9, 10, even 12-hour days during this time than any other point in my life. And for a while, that felt really good. I wanted to work, and I was allowing myself to. My mind was satisfied by the end of the day, so I didn't take my work home with me. But, of course, there are problems with this solution as well. I'd regularly find myself burning out right in the beginning of the week by working so many extra hours, so I'd be so much less effective by the end of the week. Or I'd have people come up to me with issues, and I'd say, yeah, of course I can do that. I can just stay late and finish it by the end of the day, even if it didn't need to be done that day. So it still felt good to say yes to people, though, so I kept doing it, and again, burning myself out. So that didn't really work for me either. So what matters? And how do we get this right? If it's so important to my life, then my work isn't something I can compromise on, is it? I mean, I need to work somewhere where I have a passion for my work, where I feel like I'm achieving my potential, where I feel I'm constantly improving, where I'm working somewhere where I feel I can get meaning out of my life, where they pay well, where I feel respected, where my workplace is inclusive, where I'm working somewhere where I have job security and a physical sense of security, where I feel I get a sense of approval from my peers and my family and my friends and those others in the industry, where I feel like I'm doing good and I'm leaving the planet a better place than I found it, and I'm already starting to feel tired about how many things you have to have in your mind constantly to be achieving everything, and we're still not done. I need to work somewhere where I can become famous and the power and the status that comes with that. I need to be working somewhere where I'm excited to go every day, where I'm living up to who the child me wanted to be, but I'm also building the foundations for who my future self wants to be. And that sounds perfect, right? If you can hit all those. But that's not me. And understanding my anxiety also means understanding my motivations. So which of these really matter? For me, the most easiest one for me to pinpoint that I don't care about was fame. I don't want to be famous. Even standing up in crowds like this doesn't really work well for me. I'm even child-free. I've got nothing in me longing for any sort of legacy. And going through each of these points, I was trying to find the key point that for me mattered more than any others, was the last one. I'm building the foundations for who my future self wants to be. Because in the end, that is all I am. And I don't need to make every single day better than the last. I just need to know I'm going generally in the right direction, which takes a lot of the pressure off. And the worst thing I did when trying to figure this out was in trying to compare myself to others. It took me a long while to realize that I couldn't emulate the actions of others to achieve their motivations, which sounds obvious when said like that. But the reason I tried working for my lunch breaks and tried staying late was because I saw my coworkers doing this, and they seemed dedicated and motivated to their roles, and I wanted that. I wanted to be viewed in that way. Further to that, I'd watch others leading projects or learning new programming languages, doing conference talks. I'd see others doing courses and online schooling, and I always felt like I had to be doing it too to keep up with these amazing people around me. But generally, it wasn't one person doing all these things. It would be multiple people doing one of these things. But I'd still be comparing myself to everyone in every aspect constantly. I could be doing everything in my power to go above and beyond in every aspect of my life, work and at home, but there literally aren't enough hours in the day. So what's currently working best for me? I'm going into work around the same time every day. I'm allowing myself to finish problems when I come to them, but I'm trying not to take on new work near the end of the day. I still compare myself to others, but I try to give myself small kindnesses and celebrate my achievements when I have them. And I'm trying to say no to people, but that's definitely a work in progress. So my work-life balance won't be the same as yours, but trying to figure out what matters to you was one of the biggest things that I've done recently for my mental health. And I found that it has made my life so much easier and made me feel like I am taking the right steps to walk towards an easier path for myself. So hopefully if you're struggling with the same kind of things, my journey will help you make those same kind of changes and walk towards an easier direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, mainly for raising such a topic that affects so many people, I think. Can I?
Surprisingly large number of people.
Yeah, can I just do a quick poll? Who, to a lesser or greater degree, has wrestled with some of the topics that have just been mentioned?
Good.
That's pretty much everybody. Yeah. Okay. So
it's such a problem, particularly in today's society, where we're constantly on social media. I know it's a total other discussion in and of itself, but you're constantly looking at other people's best lives on Instagram, following other people's, just their achievements, the biggest things that they want to show the world.
Yeah.
And you have to compare yourself just to that, because no one's going to show their shit day.
Yeah, completely. I think a lot of that, to me, seemed like you trying to work out what was most important.
Absolutely.
And prioritizing those values.
Yeah.
That in itself often isn't an intellectual process, I don't think. It's quite an emotional one.
Yeah, and there's so much constantly going on in the back of your head, like weighing on your decisions, and you don't even realize it, and you feel this anxiety around it, but until you actually try to understand where those motivations are coming from, you can't really break them down.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
I know personally that it's absolutely impossible to work out what's making me anxious until I let myself sort of have this escapist fantasy or this daydream that tells me something about what it is that I really need.
Yeah.
What is your process to actually triage those different
So
values?
for me, it was actually 2 rounds of therapy. So I went through cognitive behavioral therapy, and then I went for a round of talking therapy. The CBT helped me actually be able to stop myself going into panic attacks when it was happening. But the talking therapy, I'd highly recommend to everyone. It was really good to just sit down with someone and for them to just kind of like guide you in the right direction with your conversations. I guess doing that is like same kind of thing, but with a professional who's able to talk you through those kind of things.
Yeah, brilliant.
And just help guide you through into the right areas. And actually going through that with someone who is professionally accredited helped me do that in my own time as well and try to figure out, I'm having these thoughts. I wonder why. Oh, this actually is feeling the same as it did in high school when I had this situation or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you give us any examples of the sorts of questions that the therapist in a talking therapy situation would lead you through?
A lot of it sounds very, I guess like TV, very standard of like, there was a lot of, do you have, sorry.
You're coming in and out, I think.
Cool, that's fine. So a lot of it was the kind of standard, does this, you keep saying should a lot. Does that remind you of anything your parents used to say? And I'm like, no, that's definitely from me. Except for then it was like, oh no, that was something one of my teachers used to say a lot when I was in high school actually. And the should rather than the could. And yeah, I don't know, there's a lot of kind of like probing and trying to figure out like, there's this thing that's always been at the back of my mind. And I've always thought like, it's just there, but I don't really care about it, but you do. Yeah. And it's actually kind of exposing that and saying, yes, this is something that matters to me and I should look into it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask the panel if they've got any personal experiences with this in just a second, but kind of another technique, I guess, is to be honest with yourself that something is important to you, but you want it to be less important, and then how do you kind of devalue it in your value system? Is that something that can work? Have you tried that?
Yeah. I guess for me it wasn't so much recognizing it and making it like trying to devalue it, but recognizing it, and that just made it less prominent, I guess.
Calling it out.
Yeah. So one of the things, getting a bit personal now, was I found that I was feeling very anxious whenever. So I go out for coffee every morning with some of my co-workers, and one morning they went without me because I was slightly late, and I felt so trash about that. I was like, they hate me, they've never liked me, they don't want to hang out with me, and it was so obvious after the fact. It was like, this just goes back to a very similar situation I had in high school where they didn't like me, but these people definitely do, so it's fine, and it's a one-off. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, actually having that moment of like clocking it and realizing, that's where that's from. It made the current situation so much more like palatable.
Yeah. Saying it out loud and then
exactly.
realizing what it actually is. Thank you for sharing. Other panelists, have you wrestled with this? Have you got any tips? Yeah.
I just thank you first. No, thank you for talking.
Thank you.
And I think it's definitely like a battle with the inner voice, or the inner voice is saying one thing, and then it's like, what do you do actively to challenge that inner voice, to question why that comes from? And I feel like that. I just thank you for you know what I mean. I like to write out. I like to 5 affirmations every morning. What are you thankful for in the morning? Things like that. That helps me carry on. You know what I mean. That helps me. So I don't know. I just wanted to say.
I've started doing the write down 3 things at the end of the day, which were like things you're thankful for that day, which has been amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. No. Yeah. Thank you. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
The thing that resonated with me, I think, is the 100% of the time on it thing. I think especially like in professional working, like you have to be, like you turn up and you have to be on it. You have to appear to like know what you're doing, even though we fundamentally all know that we don't really know what we're doing all of the time. But there's this kind of perception of like needing to like be top of the game, all that kind of thing. And then the thing that you said at the end of the self-care, I think that's the bit that's so important in terms of like knowing what you have the power to control. And I think that this is something that people are starting to get a little bit more kind of understanding or self-reflection in as well.
Yeah.
So
it still feels very Instagrammy at the moment when you say self-care. It's like, just go home and have a manicure and you'll be better. And it's like, no, not quite.
eat some avocados. Everything's fine.
But no, there is absolutely a level of like self-care is becoming a buzzword because it is important to people, and being able to find out what does kind of bring, like with your writing, where it like brings you back down, it helps you identify who you are and what makes you happy. Yeah, it is a very important thing that should be more on the radar at the moment.
Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. And sometimes it's just letting yourself off the hook,
Yeah.
taking the pressure off.
Yeah.
Awesome, Karen, thank you very, very much indeed. Round of applause, please. Thank you.